Lance Franklin joins the 100 club. And people power has spoken.
When you think of the biggest kicks in AFL history, the same ones come up, time and time again. Some setting records, some winning finals, some even sending teams into the history books. And while they all deserve to sit atop the conversation, there is one kick, often forgotten, that was arguably just as impactful as any of them. And that one kick was off the boot of Jordan McMahon in round 18, 2009. Let's set the scene. It's a dreary Sunday afternoon at the MCG, and the 13th place Richmond are facing the 15th place Melbourne in a game which many consider to be meaningless. Despite some success at the beginning of the decade, in the last 6 years these two sides have combined to win only 2 finals. They've averaged 8 wins per season and have finished with an average ladder position of 12th. Unfortunately for the fans of Melbourne and Richmond, they will have their fair share of torture still to come. But in what can only be described as truly remarkable, the last kick of today's game will turn into one of the most significant moments in AFL history and will completely dictate the upcoming decade, including setting up a Richmond dynasty and having a massive impact on the outcome of at least 5 grand finals. Despite the lowly ranking of the sides, it has been a great hard-fought match this far, and the D's go up late on the back of a Ricky Pettard goal with 1:40 to go. The largest lead of the day, only 11 points, with 10 lead changes, until...
Continue to roll, we're down to 4. No. Mark. Oh, the siren! Has he paid? It's long. It's long! Oh.
Despite the jubilation and celebration of the Richmond players and the contrasting devastation of the Melbourne side, these emotions aren't entirely representative of what the 4 points means for these two bottom ladder dwellers. While there are still games to play and points to be won, this 8-point swing has massively swung the odds in Richmond's favour to avoid the wooden spoon and gift the struggling Melbourne Football Club the number 1 pick, which in combination with the priority pick has given them unprecedented control at the top of the draft. This year's prospects are highly touted and blessed with the skills that any 16th place side would be begging for when trying to rebuild a lacking list. Enter Tom Scully, likened to hard-running elite outside midfielders Ben Cousins and Kane Corns due to his huge work rate and prolific ball-winning ability. For a team lacking top-tier talent and midfield especially, Tom is an irresistible prospect and is only strengthened by the perfect tandem he forms with young South Australian Jack Trengove. The yin to Tom's yang, Jack is a prolific inside mid who's showed no signs of slowing down, moving from the under-18 level to play against grown men for Sturt in the SANFL final to finish off his draft year. He's fresh off a best on-ground performance in Sturt's prelim, where he racked up 29 touches as an 18-year-old and topped it all off with a match-saving mark late in the game. This talent finds him drawing comparisons to young and upcoming midfielder Trent Cotchin, who he also matches for leadership skills on and off the field. Among scouts, Tom and Jack are consensus top 2 picks, both with high upside but no apparent weaknesses. The commentary at the time sees them locked together at the top for months. So sure was the football world that they were the 2 best players available for selection at that night's AFL draft. Inevitably, the consensus was proved right, and they were taken with picks 1 and 2 in 2009. But it was the Tigers who would select at pick number 3. There is an interesting wrinkle to this year's draft pool, and that is the pre-selection of 17-year-old players by the incoming Gold Coast Suns, which has diluted the talent pool at the top. Names like Trent McKenzie, Tom Nichols and Alex Keith are sure to feature in the first round of the draft in any other year, but have been pre-selected by the incoming Gold Coast Suns. There is, however, one highly touted prospect left for the Tigers at number 3. Vic Country midfielder, Dustin Martin. Dusty's talent is hard to ignore even at this young age. A late comer to the elite level, Martin didn't play national under 16s or 18s in his bottom age year, but debuted in the TAC Cup late in 08. This led scouts to suggest Martin had great upside, considering he had comparatively less exposure at the junior level than his peers. Unlike Scully and Trengove, Martin does come with some perceived rough edges, and the main criticism of Martin as a draftee has followed him right through his AFL career. Questions are made of his defensive running and consistent effort throughout games, Martin instead choosing to turn it on for small game-breaking patches, which keeps him well out of the top 2 conversation, but not enough to get past Richmond at number 3. Now, if you've even slightly paid attention to the AFL in the last 10 years, you would know the name Dusty Martin. but you can well and truly be forgiven for slipping on Tom Scully or even more so Jack Trengove. Having Dustin Martin be a part of your football club over the 2010s turned out to be a very good thing, particularly if your club has the goal of winning finals and premierships. When you compare it with the underwhelming careers of both Scully and Trengove, which to be fair have both been cruelled by injury, the difference becomes only more stark. But what is potentially more interesting is the ripple effect of this one moment on the entire decade. Now let's start by talking about how good Dustin Martin is at footy. As a sports fan, it's easy to find yourself trapped, longing for the great teams and players of the past, when true greatness is unfolding right in front of your eyes. And there is no player who fits this brief more than Dustin Martin. He's the only player ever to win 3 Norm Smith medals, not to mention all in winning sides. And he has a Brownlow medal winning season that is described by Lee Matthews as the best individual season of all time. The AFL lacks the GOAT debate when compared to American sports. If you ask someone in the street who the greatest AFL player of all time was, you could easily expect to receive 1 of 10 answers. With many great players over the years and no Michael Jordan-esque career to tower over the rest of them, the AFL's greatest of all time podium remains open for discussion. Imagine this scenario. Dustin Martin retires at the conclusion of the 2025 AFL season at age 35, after making some additions onto his current award tally. Let's say he finishes with 4 grand final wins, 4 Norm Smiths, 2 Brownlows, and 6 All-Australian selections. It's over. Nobody can even hold a candle to that resume. Not Ablett Sr., Jr., not Lee Matthews, and not Wayne Carey. And really, are those accomplishments that far out of the question? So imagine just for a second that Jordan McMahon's kick sails wide right, and Melbourne wins the match. Richmond, armed with pick 1, would be hard-pressed to select Martin over the certified sure things available in Scully and Trengove, so in 2010, Dustin Martin is playing for the Melbourne Demons. What does his career look like? Martin did get off to a somewhat slow start, particularly given the heights he would reach later on in his career. At Melbourne, he plays under Dean Bailey, the first Ripple, who escaped sacking on the back of a now non-existent tanking investigation set up by the AFL, given the extraordinary circumstances in which Melbourne was able to lose that game against Richmond amongst others. So that means no Paul Roos coming to rescue Melbourne from their hopeless run at the bottom of the ladder. But we still need to remember that at the time, Melbourne was so poorly run that the AFL literally investigated if they were losing on purpose because it seemed impossible. Given this poor environment Martin would have played in at Melbourne, would he have been so loyal as he was with Richmond when GWS come calling in 2013? Talking on trade radio, this year, Dustin Martin's manager Ralph Carr and former GWS list manager Stephen Silvani have recalled how they thought the 3-time Norm Smith medalist had become a Giants player. Carr stated, "Dusty had not had the year we'd hoped in 2012, and in 2013 he was missing his family, so it was definitely going to happen. Before a call came from above, and Dusty was back at the Tigers on a 2-year deal. That's not happening if Martin is on the list at Melbourne, fresh off a 2-win season with a percentage of 54. So in 2013, Martin ends up a Giant. What does that mean for the Bulldogs, who made their historic grand final run in 2016? Are they getting up over the Giants in the preliminary final with Martin in the mix? So potentially no Bulldogs fairy tale in 2016, and instead a battle of the bridge for the ages, which an extremely loaded Giant squad would have had every chance to win. And what about 2017? The Richmond drought-breaking premiership without Dusty? Probably not, provided they were even able to make the finals run without the first of Martin's Brownlow medal winning seasons. But who did Richmond face that year in their prelim? The Greater Western Sydney Giants. So the drought remains. The absence of Martin from the side would be massive, but they could also be short a few other key players. Would Damien Hardwick still survive the massive inside and outside pressure to remain coach of the team? Dimmer's close connection with the players, particularly that with Martin, who dealt with his fair share of off-field issues and homesickness during his time at the club, was a key factor that the Richmond board considered before bringing Hardwick back on another contract. Dion Prestia was a key signing of the club, desperate to get away from the sinking ship that was the Gold Coast Suns and compete for a flag. Would Richmond be successful enough to entice Dion over other suitors like Melbourne and Carlton? With Richmond no longer one of the premier sides in the competition in this period, would it really be as simple to land a key pillar of the 2019 and 20 grand finals in Tom Lynch? Powerhouses Collingwood and Hawthorn were tabling similarly large sums of money for the Gold Coast star, and he easily could have ended up elsewhere. And speaking of Collingwood, it can be easily argued that no club has benefited more from the insane drafting, player development, and consequent go-home GWS factor than the Pies. Would they still be challenging West Coast in the 2018 Premiership without key stars and ex-Giants Adam Treloar, Taylor Adams, Will Hoskin-Elliott? A team that was putting together a Lions-esque dynasty with Dustin Martin in tow would surely hold on to those guns for the competition for a few more years, with the chance of Premiership glory at their fingertips. Now that we know the absurd potential occurrences of this what if, let's slow down for a second and come back to the Jordan McMahon kick and appreciate how close all this was to happening. Percentage win chance statistics in sports are generally laughable, particularly models that claim to show the relative outcome of a game in the moment. It seems much more realistic to show the prediction of a game in, say, a hand of poker, where all the variables are accounted for. But obviously numbers can't really tell what's about to happen in something with far more variables such as team sport. This criticism aside, let's re-watch the passage of play that essentially delivers Richmond a historical dynasty, and examine what the percentage chance of Richmond winning this game is until the final seconds. At the ball up, down 2 points, the Tigers maybe have a 35% chance of winning the game. A good entry inside 50 maybe brings it up around 50, but with the ball cleared from defence and ending up in the hands of Matthew Bate, Richmond is probably down to a 10% chance of winning the game. And when the pass up the line finds Matthew Whelan with only 52 seconds, they go down to a 5% chance on a good day of salvaging a win. Watching this retrospectively, it's hard to comprehend how Melbourne actually manages to lose. Now, to any Richmond fan that's ever cursed out Tyrone Vickery for his play on the field, please realise that without his tenure at the club and this play here, your glorious run may not have existed. With exceptional dexterity for a 6'7" ruckman, a stumbling Tyrone cleanly crumbs the loose ball and perfectly sets up Daniel Jackson. And then, cue some vintage 36-year-old Ben Cousins magic.
Last roll of the dice here. White to Cousins. We're down to 30 seconds. Cousins to bounce. Needs to hit a target and knows.
Despite the missed mark inside 50, Cousins isn't done putting his fingerprints on this game. A tight blind turn in congestion keeps the ball moving and most importantly away from congestion, and a ball up, only for it to end up in the hands of yet another tortured soul of the Richmond Football Club, Richard Tambling. In his most unsung contribution to the Tigers, this kick has tangible connection to the dynasty yet to come. With the clock removed from the screen and just 1 second left, Tambling finds Jordan McMahon on the chest 45 metres out directly in front. And then, with a little bit of help from the field umpire calling the mark legally before the siren, the rest is history. There is a lot that can be said about how AFL history could or should have gone, but the sporting butterfly effect is impossible not to be intrigued by. The prospect that the league as we know it could be completely different is mouthwatering, particularly when you consider the difference could merely be the result of one single kick. And you can't help but wonder, what if?